A lot of people have asked me, like, what do I think about what's happening within the political landscape today? They're removing diversity, equity, inclusion. They're stripping civil rights. Um, they're removing housing in Section 8, the EDT or EBT, the food stamps. They're removing that. It's like, what do you think about all of that? I mean, it should be eye opening, for a number of you because it just wasn't that long ago, that our people were freed, from slavery. And I'm going to touch on that, and I'm going to run through a couple of the verses out of the Bible just to show that, the Creator, His word is true from a prophetic standpoint as to what happened to us, what's happening, to us, and then ultimately what we can expect, out of all of this, like what's going to be the end game, for us. So I'll start out with Hosea 4:6. It says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee. So we are being rejected. He said, thou shalt be no priest to me. See, we don't even understand who we are in the eyes of God. We think we're just black because that's what they told us coming out of slavery. That's what he means when he says, my people are destroyed mentally. We're destroyed. We have no idea who we are. We just think we're black. We do not know who or what we represent in the eyes of the Lord our God. How powerful we really are that we're running around here tripping about some civil rights and DEI and food stamps, and we're destroyed for lack of knowledge. Let's identify what this knowledge is. He said, I will also reject thee, that thou shalt be no priest to me, seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God. Y'all, we've forgotten our God. We've forgotten the way that we're supposed to conduct ourselves. So for that, mentally, we have been destroyed. And we're still, although there are no chains, around our necks and on our arms and on our feet, we're a different type of slave, to the DEI, to their civil rights. And these are things we just don't understand, what it means to be property, of another entity. But God said we are destroyed for lack of knowledge. He says, seeing thou hast forgotten. See, we've forgotten the law of our God. We've forgotten our heritage. That's how we were destroyed. They took all of that from us, right? He said, seeing thou hast forgotten the law of thy God, he says, I will also forget thy children. So for generation after generation, we find ourselves, going through, these upsets and not understanding, what's happening in here. They just drop guns off into our community. And what do? We start killing each other because we are destroyed people, right? Drugs. We take that and, we just start selling it, to our people for what? For money. This is how debased we've become. He said, seeing thou hast forgotten the law of our God, because if we knew the law of our God and if we knew who we were, we wouldn't use guns to kill ourselves. We wouldn't sell drugs, to our own, people. We wouldn't put money, as our God or before all things in life. And look at the music, that's out and how music, have over the years, it's just getting worse and worse. And people are saying, it's going to get better. I don't know what better they're looking at and or talking about, because God says it's going to continue to get worse as long as we do not recognize that we are the children of God. We're of the children of God. Let me put it that way, right? But we have not yet recognized just how important and or powerful we are. We keep looking, at these white people, their standards, their ways, and we're trying to assimilate. We want to be included, and we've forgotten, the whole factor. We're two different people. We were brought here, a number of us against our will, and the rest of us, we came here, what they call the indigenous people. You have to look at 2nd Ezra 13 to see, how the Northern Kingdom, traveled here. And that's who you call the indigenous people, today. But all of this is a part of the kingdom of Israel, God's chosen people. We're here. We're in this land, right? But you look, Ecclesiastes 7:7, it says, surely oppression make a wise man mad, and a gift destroy the heart. Right? So here, we're in this land and we're oppressed, but because they give you Section 8, because they give you civil rights, that's the gift. It destroys your heart so much you forget, that we're still in the land of our captivity. Surely oppression make a wise man mad, and a gift destroy the heart. Y'all, this is what makes the word of God so true when we truly get into it and understand what's written and know that it's not about religion, you all. The religion is corrupt. This is about our heritage. The thing that was stripped from us and coming back to realize how we have been destroyed because we've forgotten the law of our God. Jeremiah 10:1. He says, hear ye the word which the Lord speak unto you, O house of Israel. See, we don't even know that we're the house of Israel, or we don't know we're of the house of Israel. We say, oh no, I'm African American, I'm black, I'm this, I'm that. Not understanding God named us Israel, and we throw that away to be called black, to be called African American, to be deemed something that's made up. But here, God is talking to the children of Israel. And when I say you are an Israelite, say, no, I ain't no Israelite. Don't associate. Well, what are you then? If you're not an Israelite, what are you? And then you don't have an answer. I'm black. That's made up. It doesn't mean anything. But that's why he said, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. We do not know who our Lord is. We do not know what our law is. We've been stripped of our heritage. But look at what God says. The Lord speak unto you, O house of Israel. Jeremiah 10:1. He said, the Lord speak unto you, O house of Israel. Thus saith the Lord, learn not the way of the heathen. Now, when he say learn not the way of the heathen, that's also like saying learn not the way of the other nations. Because when we learn their ways, it weakens us. And you all can see the weakened state that we're in. We're crying right now because they're taking back their civil rights. See, you got to know if they could take it back, then it wasn't ours. If they can give it, if they can take it, that means it's a privilege. It was never a right to begin with. Once we were so-called free, we should have never allowed ourselves to be put under their jurisdiction or within their leadership. We should have stood on the standard of liberation, but we are destroyed for lack of knowledge because we don't know who we are. Coming out of slavery, we felt like they were the greatest people on earth, not understanding who they were, what their intent and or purpose is in the scheme of the prophecy and the way of the Lord our God. What's really happening right here? But let's go Deuteronomy 28:1, because he said we shouldn't learn the ways of these other nations. Well, if we shouldn't learn the ways of these other nations, what should we be doing, y'all? Right? Deuteronomy 28:1, he says, it shall come to pass if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God. See, that's the requisite for us right there. We are destroyed because we don't know the voice of the Lord our God. And we've allowed them to, confuse us with the concept of the religion. And when we look at what's written in this book, we're like, oh no, that's tampered with. They did this, they did that. But no, these are our words. This is our book. These are our ancestors. This is the missing thing that we've been looking for based on our heritage. This is our superpower. This is our history. This is what they took from us and tried to make it theirs. And they created the religion. I don't want the religion. I want my heritage. Right? I want to understand what is the law of the Lord my God, that I can no longer be destroyed. Right? But here, he said, if thou shalt hearken diligently unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments. See, this is what we've been pushed away from. As he said, not to follow the ways of the other nations. See, God gave us a way, but we have been destroyed. We don't know what that way is, right? And due to the religion, right? They call it Christianity. But due to that, we don't want to observe the commandments of God, because under the religion, they tell you those things are done away with. You ain't got to do that, anymore. But God says that we should hearken diligently to the voice of the Lord our God, to observe and do all his commandments. He said, which I command thee this day, that the Lord thy God will set thee on high above all nations of the earth. Y'all, that right there is the promise that God is making, to us. Although we're destroyed people, he said, if we hearken diligently to his voice, if we observe and do his commandments, he said he will put us on top. See, right now we're on the bottom. We're a destroyed people. As he said, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And knowledge he qualified in Hosea 4:6 as being his law that he gave us. That's the knowledge that we're missing. In Deuteronomy 28:1, he says, if we hearken diligently unto his voice and observe to do all the commandments, coming back to that law, which is the way of life that he's provided for us. If we do that, we'll be put on top. We won't have to worry about their civil rights. We won't have to worry about DEI and Section 8 and food stamps. So all of what's happening right now, it's written, it's prophetic. We're just going, through the motion. Unfortunately, we don't know who we are within the scheme of being God's children, right? We're at the head of who, God's children are. We will be the leaders of that thing, but we can't tell right now because we walk around with our pants down and our children are lost, and we're killing each other, and we're vulgar, we're violent. I mean, we can't see it right now. We are destroyed for lack of knowledge, and we should not follow after the ways of the other nations. So what should we follow? God said if we hearken diligently unto his voice, that he will set us on high above all the nations on earth. That's where we want to be, because we know that we are a great people, kings and queens on the earth. And what happened? What happened to us? It's just like, it's more than a blur. It's like it's amnesia, right? But in order for us to get back to that position, we must hearken to the voice of the Lord our God. Which brings me to the point of faith, Hebrews 11:1, where it says, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. When you look at God saying he's going to put us above all nations on earth, y'all, that's the substance of a thing hoped for. For you all out here talking about you got faith, I got faith. Most of y'all don't even know what faith is, what it's attributed to. It's just a broad term for a number of you. It's just something to say because it sounds good and it make you feel good. But it's time for us to get past, feel good words and come to understand how to apply these things in our life that we can receive the benefit from it, right? But God said he'll set us on high. So that's the substance of the thing hoped for. And as you've heard me say before, The evidence of the thing not seen, you all. That's going to be when God actually delivers on that promise. We'll have the evidence of seeing ourselves, above all nations. But right now we can't see it because we're dealing within the oppression, right? But that's what faith is all about. The substance of the thing hoped for. Yeah, he's going to put us on top. The evidence of the thing not seen, right? Once we achieve the point of being on top as God promised, then we'll have the evidence of it, as to where right now we can't see it because we're going through the hardship. But faith means we know God is going to do what he says he's going to do if we hearken to his voice diligently. Let's look at number 15. It says, but it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day. See, this is where we are, because we don't know God. We don't listen to God. We don't understand anything which God has said, for us to do, because we're a destroyed people. And we're trying to figure out, why are we oppressed? And why is God allowing all these things to happen to us? It's because we haven't taken to pay attention to what he's written for us to live our life by. We're following after the ways of the heathen, which means, as it pertains to number 15, we're not hearkening to the voice of the Lord our God. So if we don't hearken to his voice, then we can't receive the promise to where he said he's going to put us on top, right? And we're so destroyed that when you start talking about coming together, to live according to this way, you got folks that don't want to do it because they now love the corruption. As he said, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. He said, but it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken, to the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe and to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon thee and overtake thee. And this is what we're witnessing, the bad things in life that are happening to us, because God said, if you don't want to adhere to what I'm pointing out to you, and you want to follow after the ways of the other nations, then bad things are going to happen. You're going to kill yourself. You're going to put money over the vitality of your life. You're going to use drugs, and you're going to, follow after them, for your salvation, for, for your survival. Other people will mean everything to you. Look, jump down to 45. He says, moreover, all these curses shall come upon thee and pursue thee and overtake thee till thou be destroyed. Again, destroyed. And it's not talking about a destroyed as in unalived. It's talking about a destroyed, to where we're not on top. We're not ruling. We're not functioning, as the kings, as the rulers of this earth, as God intended us to do, right? Because thou hearken not unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to keep his commandments and his statutes, which he commanded thee. So for that, we're destroyed, trying to figure out what's going on. Why is all of this bad stuff happening, to us? Oh God, Lord, it's like, don't call, oh God, Lord, if you're not willing to hearken to his voice. If you've allowed for the religion, to taint your mind and make you feel like you don't have to do these things, don't call on the Lord, because he said we have to hearken to his voice in order to receive these promises, right? He says in 46, and they shall come upon thee for a sign, talking about all these bad things that's going to happen. For example, when we see ourselves killing each other, in the streets, when we see ourselves strung out on drugs, when we see ourselves, stressing out because of the Section 8 and no food stamps, it's like these things are a sign that God said we would be oppressed for not hearkening to his voice, for not wanting to live according to the standard that he gave us, the law of life for the heritage, because we throw that away and we follow, after the people that lead this country, their politics and their way. So for that, we are destroyed, and we will never, under their leadership, stand to our full potential. He said, they shall be a sign, and they shall be upon thee for a sign, and for a wonder, and upon thy seed forever. So you got some folks that say, oh, well, the Bible said that you would be, enslaved for 400 years. Well, see, they're not understanding the depth of the prophecy, how it goes. Yes, enslaved for 400 years. But then once we come out of the slavery, God said we have to hearken to his voice. And if we don't hearken to his voice, then the bad things that he said would happen would still happen. So yeah, we're not under the yokes of iron, right? We're out here moving around. We're still in the land of our captivity. And because we refuse to listen to the voice of our God, then, the signs are still upon our seed and generation after generation, because we are a destroyed people. We've not yet understood that we have to turn back to God. How we haven't come to understand what that means or how that looks. And when you bring this to someone, the only thing they can think of is white Jesus. And I know you don't want nothing to deal with that, because I don't want anything to deal with that. But these words have nothing to do with their religion and the lies that they have told. They intentionally did that to keep us deceived. This book and these writings, you all, this prophecy is pertaining to us, because these things impact and or affect us in our daily lives today. You can see it like I can see it. You can feel it like I feel it. We're experiencing it in real time. He says in 47, because thou serve not the Lord thy God with joyfulness, meaning we're following after the ways of the other nation. As he said, do not follow after the ways of the heathen, the other nations. Because thou serve not the Lord thy God with joyfulness and with gladness of heart for the abundance of all things. Look at what he's saying. He says, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemy, which the Lord shall send against thee. So God has put us in this position because we refuse to listen to him. So he said, okay, I'm going to let you deal with your enemy, right? And if you don't know who the enemy is, shame on you. Because the writing is on the wall. It's in black and white. It's just that clear. He said, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies. Y'all, who do we serve in the land of our captivity? Who do we look for civil rights and voting rights and, housing? And who do we go to, right? These people have become your God, because we follow after the ways of the heathen and don't know that we put these people in the position and or the place of a God. He said, therefore thou shalt serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee. And what do? They oppress the hell out of us. And they're showing you right now today what we mean to them as they remove the privileges that they gave you under their leadership. And they want to show you how much they value, all of the contributions that you've provided to their livelihood and their heaven, because this is their heaven. Okay. He says, therefore thou shalt serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee in hunger and in thirst. Right? In hunger, we got to go to them for the food we want. We go to their supermarkets. And in thirst, they send us the water bill. We buy water. I mean, none of these things and resources are free to us. And in nakedness, they control all of the textile companies. Yeah, you got a few of us, that can make some clothes, but they control all these things. They set the market prices. And in nakedness and in want of all things, you all look at it. We're in a panic right now because they're talking about removing civil rights. In want of all things, we have to deal with our enemies. It's just that simple. That's who they are. And you can want to love on the enemy all you want because white Jesus and the religion of Christianity, and they have tricked your mind into thinking, oh, we just need to love and love. That's crap. God said we're going to serve our enemies in want of all things. He said oppression should make you mad, but because they've given us all these things, those gifts have destroyed your heart. You are destroyed because you don't have the knowledge. We don't know who we are, but it's time for us to reposition ourselves that we can get past these people, you all, and we can get the promise that God said we can be on top of. Most of y'all don't believe that, but we got to put the work in, right? You ain't gonna just lay it in our lap. We're gonna have to put the work in. We're going to have to come to understand what it means when he said, hearken diligently unto my voice. And we got to get the voice of the white man and white Jesus and their religion out of our head, because those things have caused us to be a destroyed people. He says in 48, in want of all things, he says, talking about your enemy now, finishing up. Deuteronomy 28:48. And he shall put a yoke of iron. Y'all know who wore the yokes of iron. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. We keep hearing this word destroyed. And this is what happened. He put the yoke of iron on our neck, broke us down, destroyed us. We don't know our heritage. We don't know our language. We don't know our name. You know, we don't know our history. We don't know who our ancestors are. We just think we're black. We just think we come from slavery, right? So you look at it from 1865, that's supposedly when we were freed, right? Then to 1965, y'all, that's just 100 years. How many generations from 1865 to 1965, right? And then to 2015. Another 25 years. I'm sorry, from 65 to 2015, that's another 50 years, right? So it hasn't been that long, you all, that we were able to come up out of the slavery, but they put the yokes of iron on our necks and they took them off once we were destroyed. We accepted the fact that, yeah, we're just black. We accepted the fact that we don't have no power. We accepted the fact that if we want to have a livelihood, that we have to look up to them in order to garner that livelihood. So we are destroyed. And he said in Deuteronomy 28:48, right, that we were going to serve our enemies that the Lord would send against us. And he said, and he shall put a yoke of iron upon our neck until they have destroyed us, y'all. And that's what they did. So here we are from 1865, coming down to 2025, right? Looking at 160 years, and it's not that long, you know, you all. And then you think 1965, you know, coming up to 2025, looking at that 60 years, 65 was right around the time things started to ease up, you know, just a little bit. So it's been 60 years where they gave you the civil rights and, you know, the job. See, this is the gift that destroys the heart. When you look at Ecclesiastes 7:7, it says oppression should make you mad. But it's the gift that they gave that destroyed the heart. And now we're back at the point forgetting, you know, of the oppression. But we're now starting to remember it again because they're taking away the civil rights. They're taking away the DEI. They're removing, you know, the want of all things, the Section 8 and the housing and the food. And so now we're realizing again, right? You know, that God said these things would happen to us because we follow after the way of the heathen. It hadn't been that long, you all, from 1865, 1965, 2015, 2025, right? Man, you should know when you look at the scripture and you talk about the yokes of iron being put on our necks and us being destroyed. These words speak at the heart of our issue. You want to talk about the Black experience? All of what we've been through? What I've described in the words of the Lord our God, which transcend time. These words speak directly to the things that we have experienced within the Black experience. Oppression, you all, that's all we can relate to. That's all we know as a people. It's the oppression that we've been through. Jeremiah 17:4. He says, and thou, even thyself, shall discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee. You all, this is what happened to us. This is what happened to our ancestors because we refuse to follow after the ways of the Lord our God, and we're following after the other nations. So we've been discontinued from our heritage, but it's temporary. It's only for a short time. And let's be thankful for the things that are transpiring today because it's making us remember the importance of who we are and how we need to function within the reigns of the Lord our God, that we can be put back on top, that we can't depend on these people for our survival, for the way we thrive and how we live our life. We can't depend on these people for salvation, that we can be relieved from this oppression. We can't look to them, for this. He says, and thou, even thyself, shall discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee. He says, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in a land which thou know not. You tell me these words don't speak to what we're experiencing, knowing we're still in the land of our captivity. I know the hardest part for a number of you is to understand the concept of the enemy, because you love the texture, you love the color of the white man, and you hate the color and the texture of your own skin and hair. We have been destroyed. That's what it means to be destroyed, right? He says, we're going to serve our enemies in a land which thou know not. He says, for ye have kindled a fire in mine anger, which shall burn forever. Right? So for those who say, well, the Bible said you was only supposed to be in slavery for 400 years and blah, blah, blah. See, forever, there's an addendum, to that, which means as long as we're going to follow after the heathen, then God is going to punish us until we realize, oh, snap, we're the children of God. We're walking the wrong way. Y'all, we got to turn around. God said this was pertaining to his law, his statutes, his commandments, his heritage, the way that we're supposed to function and dress and eat and think, and the culture, the customs, the traditions. We don't do Easter. We don't do Christmas. We don't do Valentine. We don't do the things the heathen do. He said that we should not follow after the ways of the other nations. All that stuff, all these things we celebrate, these are the things that they put in position and no place. God didn't give us those things. God gave us a heritage, and we rejected to follow after the heathen, the lowest specimen on earth. But God said, you know what? I'm going to put you lower than them until you realize who I am and who you are to me, that you can be put back in your rightful place. Number 5, he says, thus saith the Lord, cursed be the man that trusts in man and make flesh his arms, whose heart depart from the Lord. See, when we follow after their customs, their traditions, he said, cursed be the man that trusts in man, because we're trusting in them. We're not trusting in the Lord, and then we think they have the power. They have the way. They have the understanding. And we click up and think we're strong when we have a gang. And see, he says, cursed be the man that trusts in man and make flesh his arm. Arm is strength, right? And we click up as a group of people and think that's going to make us strong. But God said, cursed are you for doing these things, because our heart have departed from the way of the Lord our God, and we're weak. Even though we have 100 men around us, one white man show up and all the Negroes get to scattering like roaches, right? Hosea 5 and 15, the Lord said, I will go and return to my place. This is what God, he got pissed off. He's like, okay, I'm not dealing with y'all no more like this. I'm just going, let the heathen, I'm going to let the white man, I'm going to let your enemy, I'm going to let him oppress you until you realize, who I am and who you are. He says, I will go and return to my place till they acknowledge their offense. Have you acknowledged your offense? Have we acknowledged our offense? Have we come to understand who we are? No, not yet. We ain't had enough, just yet. Most of y'all still want to be corrupt and you want to follow after what they say. You want their money. You want their way of life. You ain't done just yet, right? He said, but till they acknowledge their offense and seek my face, because he gave our ancestors the order that said, if we hearken diligently, it's a simple thing, you all. But it just seems so difficult to complete and to do because we've been destroyed. So trying to come back to it, it just seems unnatural. But this is where we need to be, right? He says, and seek my face in their affliction, they will seek me early. Right? He says, till they acknowledge their offense and seek my face. In their affliction, they will seek me early. So it's like we haven't been oppressed enough, obviously, because we're still, looking at them, for the things that we need outside of knowing what it means to regroup, not under the religion, because they created the religion as a distraction, right? The religion was man-made. It's not of God. As he said, cursed, be the man that trusts in man. So the religion came from man. You can't trust it, right? It has the zeal of God, but it's not according to knowledge. And we understand knowledge, as he said, it pertains to the law of life that he gave us for the heritage. In the religion, they tell you, you ain't got to worry about that. We got something else for you, right? And I'm not taking anything away from the Son of God, because the Son of God does play a role, in that, but not the way that they gave it to us, right? What devil is going to give you the truth? No, they came in the image, in likeness of God. As he said, the angel, the devil would transform himself into an angel of light, and so would his ministers. They would do the same thing. That's why they created the religion. That's how they put their hand on our book, and they created a facsimile, a cheap imitation, of the heritage, and they call it a religion. But God said, cursed be the man that trusts in man, right? He says, Hosea 5:15, I will go and return to my place till they acknowledge their offense. Y'all, let's acknowledge the offense that we've turned our back on our God. He says, and seek my face. Let's understand what God said as he said, if you hearken diligently unto my voice, he said he's going to put us on top. He says, in their affliction, they will seek me early. And that's what you see. Every time we go through something, that's when we start wanting to pray and go to church and fall on our knees. And so we're in our affliction, and it's just getting started, that they are pushing us back to the Lord our God. So that's a good thing. You look at 2 Ezra 9 and 22, he said, let the multitude perish then, which were born in vain. Basically, a number of you, you're not going to turn around your soul on being corrupt. You're happy, with the disruption and the dysfunction. You're not going to see yourself as an Israelite. You're not going to see yourself as the house of Israel. You're not going to see yourself as a descendant of Jacob. You want to see yourself as black. You want to see yourself as African American. You want to see yourself as something other than what God has named you. He says, so let the multitude perish then. This is God talking, right? This is what's written. He said, which were born in vain. If you do not want to come back to the Lord our God, you were born in vain, and you're going to perish. But God said, let my grape be kept. He's talking about those that honor him, right? He said, and my plant. He said, for with great labor I have made it perfect, which says we done been through hell, you all. but he promised that he's going to put us back on top if we hearken diligently unto his voice. So therefore, all the things that we've gone through, he said he's going to make us perfect. For all the transgressions and things that we've done in ignorance, not knowing, the Lord our God, he says he's going to forgive us for those things. He's going to make us perfect. See, in the affliction, we're going to seek his face. We're going to seek him early. Some of us are going to turn around and others are just going to keep going against the cliff till they fall off, right? He says, but for those of us that he's keeping, he's going to make us perfect. But the rest of y'all, you're going to perish. It's just as simple as that. Jeremiah 46 and 28, he says, fear not. He says, fear thou not, O Jacob, my servant. See, the children of God, being of the seed of Jacob in the religion, they tell you, oh, no. It's like anybody and everybody can be a part of it. I tell you what, if you want to believe that, if you want to go along with that, you go right ahead. Because in the end, the Lord going to have mercy on who he will have mercy on, right? I'm just trying to tell you what's written. And the way God said, fear thou not, O Jacob. We don't recognize that we're O Jacob. We're the descendants. These are our ancestors when you talk about Solomon and King David, and when you talk about Jesus, Joshua and Samson and Samuel, and when you speak about these great men, you're talking about our ancestors, right? Fear thou not, O Jacob, my servant, saith the Lord, for I am with thee. God is with us, but we've forgotten because we are destroyed people. We've turned our back on our God to follow after the ways of the other nations. We want to do Christmas. We want to do Easter. We want to do Resurrection Day. We want to do Valentine's Day and New Year's and every celebration that they have. We want to do what the other nations do. We're reading horoscopes and we're doing all the things that God said do not do. So for that, we have lost our understanding. We have lost our way. He says, fear thou not, O Jacob, my servant, saith the Lord, for I am with thee. He says, for I will make a full end of all the nations whither I have driven thee. Do you hear what God says in the prophecy, right? And remember, Christ said he didn't come to change the law or the prophets. So some folks in the religion will try to make you think this isn't true. This is the Old Testament. But Christ said he didn't come to change what the prophet said. So therefore, every word of God must stand. He said he's going to make a full end of the nations where he have driven us. You all, did he not drive us here to America? Are we not still in the land of our captivity? He said he's going to make a full end of these people, right? Those that have put themselves above us, those who we serve in this nation today, who God calls our enemy. He said he's going to make a full end of them. And that's what they hate. And this is why they treat us the way they treat us, because they know who we are, but we don't know who we are. And they're trying to get the most out of it. They're trying to ride it till the wheels fall off. You hear me? But God said he's going to make a full end of the nations, whether he have driven, us. And you got to think, the children of God have been scattered abroad. We're in other places too, but the largest body concentration of us being, of the children of God, we're right here in this place called America. We're the ones that you can most, notably look at and come to realize, we went through, a number of us, we went through that Atlantic slave trade. We're here because of that. We experienced a specific degree of atrocity in this land. And they want to deny it still to this day, right? Even got some of y'all fools saying it ain't happened. He says, will make a full end of all the nations whether I have driven thee. He says, but I will not make a full end of thee. So it's like we're going through hell, been through hell, but he says he's not going to make a full end of us, but a number of us are going to perish The multitude of us are going to perish because we're not going to turn around. We're hell bent on going after the ways of the white man, the ways of the other nation, the ways of transgression. We're destroyed, right? As a people, we do not know the knowledge and know the way of our God. So therefore, we will perish for those of us who cannot turn around. But God said he's not going to make a full end of all of us. He said, but correct thee in measure. See, this is where we get corrected, where we turn back to God and come to understand, oh, we do have a heritage. It's different than what we've been taught in the educational institutions and the religious institutions that they've provided, for us. What God has written and how he's asking us to follow after him, it's totally different than what we've been taught, because everything that we've been taught in this life, it's been a lie, right? And that's heartbreaking for a number of us to come and realize. He says, but he's going to correct us within measure. He says, yet will I not leave thee wholly unpunished. Like, we're going to receive some judgment, and we're going through the judgment, right now, but God is going to deliver us up out of this when we turn back to him, coming to understand that if we hearken diligently unto his voice, that he's going to provide us with the blessings. Amos 3:2, he says, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. Now, where's the confusion within the religion Christianity, where they want you to think God knows and loves everybody? But the prophet has said, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. This is God speaking through the prophet, that for the children of Israel, and if you don't want to be Israel, then who are you and how can you claim God? The religion has poisoned your mind into thinking that you can have some attachment to God, because they said you can have attachment through their religion. But God says, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. He says, I will punish you for your iniquities, right? He's going to punish us because our ancestors took the oath that said we're going to hearken to his voice, and that the generations after that, they said that they would teach us the mannerisms to whereby we could live by our heritage, but they abandoned it. So therefore God said, I will punish you for your iniquities, but at the same time, I will replenish you as well. Right? But the other nations, they were meant to serve us, but here we are serving them because we failed to understand who we are in the eyes of the Lord our God. He said, you only have I known of all the families of the earth. Ezekiel 35:4. He says, I will lay thy cities to waste. Now he's talking about our enemy, at this point, because they've grown strong here in America. They're proud, right? Like nobody can stop them. And just like God built up Pharaoh in the day of the Egyptians, he's building up this white man in the day of the Americans, right? Nobody can touch the white man. He's so strong. He Hercules, he too great. Like nobody can bring him down. But God has built this man up so that he can show, right? Nobody can touch him. He made this man, formidable as he is, so that he can prove when he come and he take him down that he is God, just like he took Pharaoh down back in the day, y'all, which brings me to the point, man. We're about to witness another Exodus as we're still in the land of our captivity. God got something good for us, which supersedes what we think we know in the greatness of the American dream. The American dream is nothing with respect to what God had for his people. He says, I will lay thy cities to waste, talking to the white man and all the other nations out there, as he said he was going to make a full end of the other nations. He says, I will lay thy cities waste, and thou shalt be desolate, right? So all of this wealth and everything that they have right now, all that's going to drop. It's going to topple. God is going to destroy them. Well, they have to be destroyed in order for us to be on top. You can't have two, nations on top. There can only be one. And God have chosen us to be at the head of his kingdom, right? He says, I will lay thy cities to waste, and thou shalt be desolate. Talking to the other nations, more specifically, talking to the white man right now today, who, in the eyes of God, is known to be, our brother Esau, right? Jacob's brother, Jacob's twin brother. He said, and thou shalt know that I am the Lord. It's like right now, they're very prideful. They're very strong in their language, but God gonna bring them down like he brought Pharaoh down, and they will know that he is the Lord. He says, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred. This is what I'm trying to tell you. Y'all think these folk love us. Y'all think y'all can love these folk, but they have a perpetual hatred from generation to generation. It don't change. It's in their DNA, right? He said, because thou hast had a perpetual hatred and has shed the blood of the children of Israel. That's us. You all know they've shed our blood. They murder us cold in the street and don't think about it and let their people get off time and time again. It's a perpetual hatred that they've shown against us and for us, right? We see it, we know it, although we deny it because they give us money, they give us jobs. They allow us to be billionaires and millionaires and entertainers. That gift destroys the heart, but the oppression, it should frustrate you, right? He said, and has shed the blood of the children of Israel by the force of the sword in the time of their calamity. You all know they take advantage of us, right? He says, in the time that their iniquity had an end, meaning we should be able to thrive, we should be able to live, but they're like, nope, they're going to continue. They're not going to remove their foot from off of our neck. It's no different than how, the Pharaoh's heart, was hardened. And all of this, again, y'all, is so that the Lord can build up to show who he is and how mighty he is. And furthermore, we're a stubborn people as well. As I said, the majority of us are not going to listen to what God is saying with respect to hearken to his voice. You're not going to hear the words that are coming out of my mouth to you. This sounds ridiculous. That you should stop the violence in your life, that you should stop living promiscuously, that you should, change and come to understand what the dietary law is or what the customary laws are and what our holidays are and the way that God prescribed for us to live. To you, that sounds crazy because all you know is the American way. All you know are the customs and the traditions of the heathen, which God said that's going to be the reason of your calamity, your destruction, your death, your failures, because you're following after the ways of the heathen. And he said, don't do that. He said, follow after the ways that I've given you. But to you, that sounds strange. And furthermore, the religion have made it difficult for you to see. They muddied the waters, right? But everybody ain't gonna make it. This is not for everybody, but for those of you that can hear the frequency of my voice, and you know that the sound of the voice of the Lord, or the voice of the Lord our God, is strong in the land. You know what I'm talking about, right? Acts 26 and 22, he says, having therefore obtained help from God, this is Paul talking, having therefore obtained help from God, I continue unto this day, witnessing both to the small and great, saying none other things than those things which the prophet and Moses did say should come. And that's what I'm doing right now here today. I'm telling you what the prophets and what Moses did say will come. I'm telling you, what Christ did say, is going to happen. I'm telling you what God has said. But in the religion, they say, oh, no, you ain't got to worry, about that. You could do Christmas, and it's okay to be a Democrat and a Republican and to live after their, their politics and their religion and to follow after the other nations. But God said, don't do these things. The prophet said, don't do these things. Moses said, don't do these things. Even Christ said, don't do these things. He said, be ye perfect. as I am perfect, or how we need to be before the Lord is perfect, but they say you can't be perfect. So everything that God say we need to do, they say it can't be done. You need to know the difference, right? But we're saying, or as you hear me speaking, I'm telling you based on book, chapter, and verse, the things the prophet and Moses did say will come. Joel 2:27, he said, and ye should know that I am in the midst of Israel. See, this is a problem, because you all have a disdain for the name Israel, because you got some other white folks over there claiming, to be Israel, right? Well, you really have to pay attention, because God talks about the kingdom of Israel. They're over there under the state of Israel. God talks about Israelites. They are Israeli. These are the differences. These are the nuances they play. God said you're going to have a heritage. They came out with a religion. Right? These are the games they play, creating cheap images, right? Like making it look so close to it that if you don't know what you're looking at, it's hard for you to distinguish the difference. But Israel is the most prominent and or most powerful name in the world, because God gave us that name. God didn't call us black. God didn't call us African American. God did not call us none of the names upon which we call ourselves. Man gave us those names because we've been destroyed and we have followed after their customs and traditions. But God named us Israel. We are Israelites. That's our nationality. These are our words. This is our book. This is our law. This is our way of life. This is our way out of the oppression. But most of y'all, you don't want that. You want the paper with the pictures of the slave masters on it, thinking that's going to provide you with a great standard of life. Oppression should make a wise man mad, but that gift called money, it has destroyed your heart, right? He says, you should know that I am in the midst of Israel. He says, and that I am the Lord your God, right? That's a strong proclamation right there. He's our God, and they want to take that from us and say, no, he's everybody's God, okay? But the prophets and Moses say he's the Lord our God. Christ said he's our God. Christ said, I have come not but for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. They said, nope, nope, nope. He came for everybody, right? That's the difference with respect to what man say and what God said. And God said, cursed be the man that trusts in man. You better know what God said. He said, hearken to my voice, right? He says, and you should know that I am in the midst of Israel, and I am the Lord your God, and none else. He said, my people should never be ashamed. God said he ain't nobody else God but the children of Israel. In the religion, they said, nope, that ain't true. He's everybody's God, right? Ecclesiasticus 17:11, he says, besides this, he gave them knowledge. Y'all remember what the knowledge was back in Hosea 4:6, where he said, because we were destroyed because we did not know or follow after his law, the law of life that he gave us. That's the knowledge. He said, because this, he gave them knowledge. Looking at Ecclesiasticus 17:11. Besides this, he gave them knowledge and the law of life for an heritage. That's what God gave us. God gave us a way of life, and it's a heritage, but it was stripped from us. And because we don't understand our heritage, and it's hard for us to get back acclimated to it, we're a destroyed people as long as we continue to go after the ways of this heathen, of these other nations. Their way of life is not our way of life, you all. We are different. We're a different people, and we know we're different people, but yet we keep trying to pattern ourselves after who God calls our enemy, whom they've had a perpetual hatred for us, generation after generation. Deuteronomy 4:5, he says, behold, talking about this law of life for the heritage. He says, and this knowledge that he gave us, he says, behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments. This is what we've forgotten. This is what's written, that thankfully we can get our hands on it, that we can recalibrate ourselves to understand the statutes and the judgments that God gave us, as he said in Ecclesiasticus 17:11. He said, besides this, he gave them knowledge. The knowledge is the statutes and the judgments. He said, and the law of life for the heritage, right? He says in Deuteronomy 4:5, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as the Lord my God commanded me. This is Moses talking to the children of Israel, talking to our ancestors. He's like, I've taught you the statutes and judgments that God gave me to teach you. He said that you should do in the land whether you go and possess it, right? So we were in our land and we were supposed to do these laws, but even in our land, being as wicked as we were as a people, we rejected the laws to where we got kicked out of the land. And then we became, under from one captivity to the next captivity, to falling into captivity even here in America, right? That because we refuse to do the statutes and judgments, we're continually punished for it. Right? He says in number 6, he says, keep therefore and do them. Because if we keep and we do them, he said he's going to put us on top. He said, but if we don't do them, he said that we will be on the bottom. And because we're not doing them, you all, we're on the bottom. We're the tail when we are supposed to be the head, and we know within our mind and within our DNA that we're supposed to be the head, and we're trying to figure out what's wrong and why it's wrong. But it's because we're disobedient. We're rebellious. We're bucking against what God has given us. He says, keep therefore and do them, talking about the statutes and judgments that, were taught and that are written, that we can come back to understand what it is. He says, keep therefore and do them. He says, for this is your wisdom, not their wisdom. This is not for them. They will never understand it. They reject it. They have their own law, their own, statutes and judgments and way of life. And it doesn't benefit us. But that's why God said, do not follow after the ways of the other nations, right? He says, keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom. So under the law of life that God gave us for the heritage, this is our wisdom, but we're rejecting it to follow after the white man and his civil rights and his food stamps and the paper with the pictures of the slave masters on it. We don't even know who we are. We are a destroyed people. But wake up, y'all. Let's come up out of it, that we can fall back to the top where we need to be. Right? He says, keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations. So for us to be seen as great before the other nations, we have to follow the statutes, the judgments, the commandments, the way of life that God gave us, that we can be seen great before them. If we don't do this, we will not be seen great before them. We will see them as great because we would be under their rulership. He says, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is wise and understanding people. See, that's what's going to set us apart. That's what's going to make us different. He says, for what nation is there so great? You all, there's no one out there greater than us, but because we are destroyed, because we have fallen, because we're following after the other nations, we have no idea how great we are. God says, for what nation is there so great? There is none. But as long as we run after the ways of these other nations, we will never see it. As long as we listen, to their rule and their politics and their way, we will never see it. They will never come to you and say, oh, you know what? You are the children of God and you should be ruling the world. Right now, you see, they're ruling the world. As Job said, the world is in the hand of the wicked. They're ruling the world and they're running it into the ground. But they'll never come and say, oh, no, it was really never meant for us to rule, the world based on what's written. But, we got it right now, so we're going to do it, right? But in order for things to be turned around and put back in its rightful place, we have to be on top that we can rule the world in righteousness and that the entire world can thrive. Won't have to worry about no, what they call it, climate change and all these other disruptions that are taking place. That's because everything right now is against God. It's out of nature. But we're here to put things back on its rightful course, but we must hearken to the voice of the Lord our God. He says, for what nation is there so great who have God so nigh unto thee? Nobody, right? He said he's nobody else's God but ours, right? He said, as the Lord our God is in all things that we call upon him for. He says, and what nation is there so great? There is no other nation so great. America is not great as they talk about make America great again. It ain't going to happen. Only the kingdom of Israel is going to be great again based on what's written. And what nation is there so great that have statutes and judgments so righteous? See, none of the other, America, their laws, statute, judgment, their acts, that stuff is wicked. It's biased, right? But God says our statutes and judgments, he said, these are righteous. This is how we're supposed to conduct ourselves. This is the standard for righteousness as it is written. But y'all don't want that. You want to chase after the enemy, his way, his life. You want the paper with the pictures of the slave masters on it. You love being oppressed. You think the more money you get, then you get closer to salvation and or liberation or, whatever other wicked imagination you can come about. But none of it is real. It'll never be real. The only thing is real is that God said for us as his people. Now, if you're not his people, I promise you, I'm not talking to you. But if you understand who you are, because everybody is not a child of God, you all. Just because you look like me, that don't mean you're going to be free. It doesn't say that you're going to have salvation. He said, let the multitude perish then. So we ain't talking to everybody, right? This is a masterful illustration of prophecy that's happening in real time in front of our eyes for those who are watching and understand what's going on based on what's written. He says, and what nation is there so great that have statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law? God has given us a law, but we think the laws and acts of the white man are so great. And what they're doing is a standard to live by, right? The world is collapsing behind their law and their way of life. And what nation is there so great? There's no nation greater than the kingdom of Israel, which God is reassembling in this day and time. And I'm telling you all, we are at the forefront of that assembly. We just have to remember we're not black. We have to accept that we are Israel. We are of the children of God, that we are Israelites, because that's what God named us. But again, I know for a number of you, that's hard to hear because you have been destroyed. Slavery destroyed our people. And it took 160 years to wipe it out of your mind and to have you convinced that you're a Democrat or that you're a Republican or that you need to do something within their social construct, that you can live a good life. But God said, throw all of that away. And he said, come back to the standard for which he have given us, to the law of life for a heritage. And what nation is there so great that have statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law? And they want you to just throw it away. Like, don't pay attention to that law right there. Forget God's law. It's only 2 laws they'll tell you in Christianity, right? That's how ridiculous that is. God say of all this law, and they say, oh, it's just 2, right? But that's where the lies come in, and we have to be able to distinguish the difference, right? God says the statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law which I set before you this day. God set it before us this day. Here man come along and say, don't worry about it this day. We got another law. We got another way of life that we need to provide, for you. So we are destroyed. And if we want to come back to the promise that God said in Deuteronomy 28, where he's going to put us on top of the world, y'all, we got to turn back to what he said our law is, which will make us so righteous, which would, make us stand out before all the other nations, to where they would say, our wisdom and our understanding in the sight of the other nations, when they hear all these statutes and they say, surely this great nation is wise and an understanding people. But until we acknowledge that, they're going to continue, to oppress us. And what we see happening today, you all, is prophetic. The oppression, right? These things are real because they're helping to bring us back to the Lord our God. For we are the children of Israel. Don't let nobody tell you any different.